Going to go over to the words of the master. The words of the master, where we talk about and discuss all of the places in the Gospels where Yeshua actually speaks. All of his encounters, some of his encounters that we see, they're just Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John talking about what it is Yeshua had did. But we're specifically looking at the times when Yeshua actually spoke, what he said, and what we can learn from the situations and the words that he spoke. So this week, we are dealing with Matthew 12:46 through 50. The same account is in Mark 3:31 through 35, and also Luke 8:19 through 21. We'll probably read the version in Matthew. I think we'll refer to let's do this. Let's read Matthew and Luke. I think Luke's the one that gives us the added. Yes, let's read Matthew 12:46 through 50, and Luke 8:19 through 21.
Okay, Matthew 12:46. While he was still talking to the crowd, see, his mother and brothers stood outside, seeking to speak with him. And one said to him, see, your mother and your brothers are standing outside, seeking to speak with you. But he answering, said to the one who spoke to him, who is my mother and who is my brothers? And having stretched out his hand towards his taught ones, he said, see, my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the desire of my Father who is in the heavens is my brother and sister and mother.
Okay, very good. And Luke 8:19 through 21.
Okay, Luke chapter 8, verse 19. And his mother and brothers came to him and were unable to get to him because of the crowd. And it was reported to him, saying, your mother and your brothers are standing outside, wishing to see you. And he answering said to them, my mother and my brothers are those who are hearing the word of Elohim and doing it.
Okay, very good. So let us go back to Matthew and talk a little bit about what we see over here in these verses here. It's interesting when we look at these, the way that Messiah moves. He goes around, people are following him. He ends up in places, people's houses, or, in areas where people are kind of just crowded around, and he's, talking. And I shouldn't just say he's talking, he's probably speaking and saying something very profound. He's teaching the people. And so in this situation, whether he's inside of a crowd or inside of a building, which he very well could have been like in the midst of a crowd of people. And his mother and brothers were standing outside of that. Or he could actually have been in some building structure where he is, whatever the case may be. He's at a place where his mother and brother are looking for him. They can't get to him. And there is these people as a buffer in between. And so it's interesting to note that we don't really hear much about the mother of Yeshua much throughout the Gospels. We see briefly the pre-Yeshua Mary, right? But really the pre-Yeshua Mary is just talking to us about the beginnings of Yeshua, right? We see at the very start of his ministry, we see her, and there's this situation, and we see mention of her at his death, with not much in the middle. And so we can consider thinking about Mary. First of all, why, seemingly, why would Messiah treat his mother in this way? If he was treating her in a way at all, because it's like we don't really have the full situation fully. You could make the argument that he's making a point. That somebody said, "Oh, your mom and your brother's outside," and he said what he said, and then we don't know what happens after that. He could have said what he said, and then he could have said, "All right, good, let them in." Right, but we don't have that portion here, and so when we think about Messiah and consider Mary, consider when we think about what it is that he's saying, he kind of is making this kind of a comparison, juxtaposition of those that are his disciples and everybody else, including his mother and his brother, as if to say they wasn't followers of Yeshua necessarily. He kind of puts them on the outside. And so when you think about Mary, what really kind of a person could she have even been to even have been chosen as the place where the seed of David would be placed? I mean, could she have really been like this, some wicked person? It don't seem like it, right?
I think so.
It seems like she should have been, you would think, this, just holy person, right? But again, the scripture really don't give us that much. When we think about Yeshua's brothers, we don't really see much in regards to the brothers either. We see where they end up, which is kind of, well, I guess when you think about it all, when you think about Mary and their brothers, where they end up is different from what we see in the middle. I think it's different. If we go to John 7, go to John chapter 7, 1 through 5.
John chapter 7. And after this, Yeshua was walking in Galilee, for he did not wish to walk in Yehuda, because the Yehudim were seeking to kill him. And the festival of the Yehudim was near, the festival of Sukkot. So his brother said to him, "Get away from here and go into Yehuda, so that your top ones also see the works that you are doing. For no one acts in secret, while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these works, show yourself to the world." For even his brothers did not believe in him. Yeshua therefore said to them, "My time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. It is impossible for the world to hate you, but it hates me because I bear witness of it. That is works of wicked. That works it's wicked."
Okay, very good. So we see over here his brothers wasn't believers right here. His brothers didn't believe in him. His brothers treated him like the rest of the people that knew who he was. That's just Yeshua. How you gonna sit up here and say that this is the Messiah? And we sitting up here talking about, I don't know if it's his big brothers or must have been his little brothers, unless they was his stepbrothers. If there was his stepbrothers, they could have been his big brothers talking about, "Oh, I remember when he used to pee in the bed." But it probably was his little brother. If they wasn't his stepbrothers, they had to have been his little brothers. Yeah. And they didn't believe who he was at this time. And so the brothers, at least in the beginning and probably in the middle, where we're at over in Matthew, were in fact non-believers. And, also at this time, you have the Pharisees, they're sneaking around. They're probably talking to his mother and his brothers, talking about, why don't you go in there and see if you could get him to come out here so we could snatch him up, so we could ask him some more questions, so we could do this or that. There's anything really that could have been going on, but at least we can see that regardless of where the brothers ended up at, because they eventually, his mother and his brother do come around. If we think about Acts, if we look at Acts 1 and 14.
Acts chapter 1, verse 14. All these were continuing with one mind in prayer and supplication with the women and Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, and with his brothers.
Okay, very good. And also Galatians 1 and 19. What's that say?
Galatians 1, verse 19. And I saw no other of the emissaries except Jacob, the brother of the master.
Okay, very good. So, in some of these, there's some discrepancies when you look at these different things and talk about. There's like three Jameses, right? There's the James that's the brother of Yeshua, and there's James that's the lesser James, and then there's also James that's the greater. Some people try to act like there's three Jameses, and some people put the greater and the brother as the same James.
History said there's two. That's what we need James.
Right. And so when you talk about these people here, they literally talk about it as being the brother of Yeshua. And so we see that they come around. The mother comes around. The brothers come around. But there's a time when they wasn't. There's a time when they was non-believers. And so one thing is for sure that Yeshua he can't be being disrespectful to his mother. because he honors his mother. I never experienced him, interacting with his mother, but I can say with surety that he always honored her because he is, in fact, Yeshua, and he lived a sinless life, right? And so we can't look at this situation and think of it as a point of Yeshua dishonoring his mother, disrespecting her, but he is, in fact, making a point. He's making a point, and the thing that he is trying to say, he literally says, like, he's not able to allow anyone, whoever that person may be, to to pull him away from the ministry that he's doing, this kingdom work. That is not able to stop, right? He's not able to stop doing what he's doing and go and see about what's going on the outside. He gives a reason, right? If we go back to Matthew and 12, first of all, let's see here. 49.
Where, I was expecting John the Baptist and how, it just things weren't going the way that they was really expecting things to go.
Yes, it wasn't a clear path, a clear picture of Messiah. The revolutionaries, were thinking that the Messiah is going to come and he's going to just flip everything upside down. And so to see the way that Yeshua was going, from certain perspectives, I assume it would have been kind of, you can see why there was a level of unsurety in some of the people. And then I guess it also helps us to understand that people who like his mother and brothers, who by the time the whole thing plays out, where they end up. We fast forwards to the end, Yeshua, he puts together his mother and the beloved disciple, right? At that time, she must have made the switch at some point. But looking at the way that Messiah came and all the prophecies that he did in fact fulfill, there still are things that were left that he needs even now to fulfill, that the people thought that it was all going to happen all at the same time. What's this comment? Perhaps Matthew 11:3-6, where John and Mercer asked if Yahushua is he who comes similar to his brother's faith.
Yes.
Status at that point.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Well, when I think about John and that situation, John being somebody who, Yochanan and Mercer being somebody who, we talked about this part here where he literally did make the pronouncements of Messiah. And then because of his reality, because of what was going on, because of the fact that he's locked in chains in a dungeon somewhere, he began to have doubt.
He might have actually even had prophecy of what was going to happen to him.
Who?
John Emerson.
Say that again?
I said because he was a prophet, he might have even had.
Oh, what was going to happen to his own self?
To his own self, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to die in this place. Like, why aren't you coming to get me out of here?
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's unsure if the brothers kind of like were on board and then wasn't, kind of like how John was on board and then he has this moment of doubt. It's unsure if the mother and the brothers were in that same situation, but it's very well possible. When you think about the Mary is the one really who pushes Yeshua out. He said, "Woman, I ain't come here to be sitting up here doing these miracles and whatnot. I'm just trying to come to this wedding and turn up a little bit." And it's his mother who's pushes Yeshua out to say, do what you got to do, right? And so we see with her, there must be a level of faith that's involved. And so that's, for that reason and the fact that she was entrusted in the task of mothering Yeshua, which is it's kind of a big deal. For that reason, I feel like the thing that Yeshua is doing here really is for effect. It's really for the point of letting the people know of what their importance is as followers of Messiah and disciples of Yeshua, as opposed to saying who they are specifically. Because of the fact that we have, these small glimpses of Mary, at least Miriam, and her glimpses of faith. But I want to look at a couple things here. Verse 49, Matthew 12 and 49. Can you read that one more time for us?
And having stretched out his hand towards his top ones, he said, "See my mother and my brothers." Okay, very good. So he's pointing his hand out to his disciples, his top ones. Look at that word there, disciples or top ones. Put that up on the screen. Disciples. Top ones. Go ahead and make that big there so we can see that there. And so this word, disciples, this word that's translated as scriptures, top ones, or King James, disciples, is literally a learner, right? A pupil, a disciple. Go to the word study dictionary and look at that Greek 3101 there. Word study. There we go. Okay, that there word Greek 3101 is to learn, to understand, a learner, but more importantly here, this first note here, more in the New Testament, that a mere pupil or learner it is an adherent who accepts the instruction given to him and makes it his rule of conduct. Right? And an adherent who accepts the instructions given to him and makes it his rule of conduct. When we think about the people who he is speaking to, whether it be his closest disciples or just those who were outside of the inner circle, all of them were becoming people, adherents to the instructions that was given to them from Messiah, and making that a rule of conduct for their lives.
And so Messiah here, as he's talking to these disciples of his, is letting them know that there is a special relationship that is had between them that is closer than no other. Pull up there in the dictionary there what a disciple. A dictionary. Webster's 1828. You can just type it in.
Disciple.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And let's see here. If we look at the number 2 one, a follower, an adherent to the doctrines of another, hence the constant attendance of Messiah were called his disciples, and hence all believers, I would say, are called his disciples as they profess to learn and receive his doctrines and precepts. Okay, so when we think about the idea of a disciple, and it's also kind of hinted to in the way that Yeshua is speaking, is that it's not just about you going somewhere and hearing something that someone has to say, right? There is a way of life that is connected to you now as a follower of Messiah. And so maybe when we think about his mother and his brothers, if we was to say that there was kind of this middle period in their situation where if he truly was kind of shunning them here, which we're not sure if he actually was or if he wasn't. But if he really was, we're able to get an understanding why he would, because maybe they're not really adherents to the ways that Messiah is teaching at this time. Maybe there's still some doubt in their minds, which is causing them to be leery about some things. Go over to, because again, we're talking about blood relation to Messiah. Look at Romans 2 and 28 and 29.
Romans 2
and 28 and 29.
For he is not a Yehudi who is so outwardly, neither is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh. But a Yehudi is he who is so inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in spirit, not literally, whose praise is not from men, but from Elohim.
Okay, very good. So it's necessary for there to be something that happens on the inside of someone for it to even matter. Right? It don't matter who you're related to. Right? It don't matter who's in your family tree. These people, they grew up with their big bro Yeshua. Mary changed. Did they have diapers back then? When was diapers?
They diapers was until like the 70s.
I'm saying, but what about like cloth diapers?
They probably always.
Yeah, cloth diapers always been around.
You think humans? Did they?
Yes, they had to.
Yeah.
Is that something that we start doing now these days?
No, they had that.
I don't know. I'm gonna do some research on that. But if they had diapers back in those days, Mary changed Yeshua's diapers. Nursing definitely was a thing. We don't have to do much research on that. He's a human, he nursed, right? But she's coming and he's turning her away. Because she don't get a pass just because that's her baby. It don't matter about their fleshly connection that they have with one another. What matters is the circumcision of the heart. What matters is, has she had a change of mind and a change of heart and decide to truly follow after the things that her son was teaching at this time. If she didn't, this is why she wasn't able to come in. Go over to Ephesians chapter 5. Because if we was to know that Yeshua is just making a point over here, and then after he says this, he lets them in and they come in and everything is fine. It's still necessary for us to understand the point that he's making. Right? It's still necessary for us to understand the point that he's making, that he kind of doubles down on later in other places. But go over to Ephesians 5, read 1 down to 11.
Become then imitators of Elohim as beloved children, and walk in love as Messiah also has loved us and gave himself for us, a gift and an offering to Elohim for a sweet-smelling fragrance, for whoring and all uncleanliness or greed of gain, let it not even be named among you as proper among set-apart ones. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which is not fitting, but rather thanksgiving. For this you know that no one who whores, nor unclean one, nor one greedy of gain, who is an idolater, has any inheritance in the reign of Messiah and Elohim. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these the wrath of Elohim comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partakers with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Master. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is well pleasing to the Master, and have no fellowship with the fruitless works of darkness, but rather convict them.
Okay, very good. So we see over here the Apostle Paul over here. He says some interesting things over here. When we look at verse 3, he says these things that he mentions: fornication, uncleanness, covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints. It says, what's it saying in the scriptures? I'm looking at the King James. Verse 3. Let it not be named among you. What did it say right there in verse 3?
Proper among set-apart ones? Or the whole thing?
Yeah. What's the
But
verse?
whoring and all uncleanness or greed of gain, let it not be named among you, as is proper among set-apart ones.
As is proper as set apart one. So as the followers of Messiah, there's certain things that shouldn't be mentioned among you. And there's a whole list. He starts off with the fornication, uncleanness, and covetousness. But then neither, he says what he says, those things, let them not be named among you, but neither these other things, filthiness, foolish talking, jesting. All of these things, right? And so there's levels to your set apartness, it seems. That as followers of Elohim, as it starts off saying, be you a follower of Elohim, walking in love as Messiah. There's certain things that can't be named among you. And so when you think about what the apostle's saying over here, the apostle who himself just says what Messiah said for him to be saying, is giving you this principle that Yeshua is giving in this crowd over here. We can't be worried about these things that's going on the outside. We got to worry about what's going on the inside. If they was with us, they would be with us. So why you sit up here talking about these people who want me when all the people who is following me is here with me? But when you think about these things over here in Ephesians, you know, do we have these thoughts about things? Or do we actually give our physical family a pass?
The comment says, prolific song lyrics, how you gonna say we related when we can never relate?
I don't know what song that is, but that sounds like an interesting song. That's some bars right there. Because you have to be able to actually relate. That's what the apostle is saying over here. You, as a believer in Messiah, he said in verse 8, you were sometimes darkness. You was actually darkness. And then these people that you wasn't supposed to have named among you is still darkness. But you now are light. And so therefore you're supposed to be walking in light. So if you're with darkness, you should be shining on the darkness. If you even want to be with darkness. But you definitely can't be darkness. And you definitely can't make it seem like you darkness when you're light. Verse 11, he said, had no fellowship with the darkness or their unfruitful works, but reproved them. Yep. Right? So you can't be out here co-signing your people, your quote unquote people, your family members, co-signing on they unfruitful works. You should be reproving them. All right, look at 1 Corinthians 5, 9 through 13.
What'd you say?
1 Corinthians 5, verse 9 through 13.
I wrote to you in my letter not to keep company with those who whore, and I certainly did not mean with those of this world who whore, or with the greedy of gain, or swindlers, or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone called a brother, if he is one who whores, or greedy of gain, or idolater, or reviler, or a drunkard, or a swindler, not even to eat with such a one. For what I have to do with judging outsiders, Do you not judge those who are inside? But Elohim judges those who are outside, and put away the wicked one from among you.
Okay, very good. So he's talking about relationship, right? If any man that is called a brother is doing all of these things, this fornication, covetousness, idolater, railer, drunkard, extortioner, with such a one, know not to eat. You can't be out here fellowshipping, dealing with this person as a brother, calling him a brother, and he's doing all of these things. Right? This is what Yeshua hints towards when he says what he says. Who's my brother? It's not necessarily the person that got the same mom as me. Not necessarily. Right? That's what Paul's talking about over here. These people that you're calling a brother, they're not behaving as brothers should behave. I'm saying in the faith. They got these things that they're out here doing. You can't be keeping company with these people. Now you do make a distinction and say, and say that you're calling a brother, because in verse 10, yet not altogether with fornicators of this world, because you got to go out in the world. You got to go out in the world, right? You got to go out and do what you got to do. But those people who you out there doing what you got to do with aren't your brother. But the ones who you calling brother, they can't be doing all of these things over there. And so when we look at Yeshua back in Matthew, the point that he's making over here is that there's a new family for you in Messiah. Those that are truly in Messiah. And as he says over there, those that do the desires of my Father who is in heaven. And so it's interesting when we think about, first of all, Messiah even talking to disciples. Again, the idea of a disciple is not somebody who just goes and just hears the things that somebody is saying. That don't make you a disciple if you just only hear the things that come out of the mouth of someone. Because he says to them, for whomever does the desire of my Father who is in the heavens, that is my brother and sister and mother. Okay, so there's a way that we must live our lives, and our connection is not to these people who share our DNA, but our physical DNA, but it's with those who share our spiritual DNA, if there is such a thing. All right, so in Matthew, he says, for whoever does the desire of my Father. But in Luke, over in Luke chapter 8, which we read, verse 21, he said, my mother and my brothers are those who are hearing the word of Elohim and doing it. You know, in the Hebrew, we have a word Shema, which kind of encompasses this idea of hearing and doing. Right? This word Shema which incorporates this idea of not just hearing audible sounds and those things going into your ear hole and reverberating off of your drum and sending signals up into your brain only, but there actually being action that is associated with that hearing. You know, when you was a kid and your mommy was like, get your little self over here, and then the little self didn't move anything, and then your mommy like, did you hear me? But she asking, did you hear her because you didn't move? There wasn't no action involved, right? And so this thought, this idea that is expressed when we think about the fullness of the what it is that Yeshua is saying over here, where it says doing in the one verse, and then we have the hearing and the doing in the other verse. When we think about what he's saying is that we have this close connection, this bond that we have, the bond which is Messiah, with others who have that same bond with Messiah. That bond that each one of us have with Messiah bonds us together. What's Galatians 2? Did we look at 2 and 20? What do we look at in Galatians? What's Galatians 2 and 20?
Galatians 2:20, I've been impaled with Messiah, and I no longer live, but Messiah lives in me, and that which I now live in the flesh, I live by belief in the Son of Elohim, who loved me and gave himself for me.
Yeah. And so when we think about our identity, the writer over there is saying is no longer I, right? But Yeshua in me. And so if it's not me, then I guess that kind of helps us to understand this separation with these natural connections that we have. You're not looking at me, you're looking at Messiah in me. And the reason why you're looking at Messiah in me is because I'm walking around acting like Messiah myself. Not like I'm the Messiah, but I'm saying he's the motivator of my actions. Right? He's the one that's causing me to do the things that I am doing. All right, look at James 1. James 1. 22 through 25.
And become doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in the mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and immediately forgets what he was like. But he that looked at the perfect Torah, that of freedom, and continues in it, and not becoming a hearer and that forgets, but a doer of work, this one shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah.
Okay, very good. So if we're people who all we do is hear, it's interesting that what he is comparing these people to, which I mean, it's interesting imagery when you think about the idea of looking into a mirror and then turning away and forgetting what you look like. And as I'm thinking about it, do I need a mirror to know what I kind of need a mirror to know what I look. I mean, I guess I know what I look like. I guess I have a pretty good idea about what I look like.
Yeah, you remember what you last looked like, but you don't know what you look like unless you're looking at yourself at that moment.
At that moment, right?
You don't know what you look
Like there's like changes and things that's going on. Like I have an idea. Like I saw a picture of myself, I know it's me, but just the imagery is making me laugh a little bit. But when you think about the idea though, like it's not like you totally forget. Like you know that that's you. But the idea is that you look and see yourself in the mirror, you turn away, and then you don't have any idea what it is that you look like at all. Is the idea, which is silly. But that's what he's saying. Like you're acting the way that you would be acting if you were only a hearer, would really be as if it just, like the saying goes, just goes in one ear and out the other. Because the things that you receive from the word of Elohim instigate actions. If it don't instigate actions, then it really you never heard it really. You didn't hear it. And so if there isn't doing to go with the hearing, I mean, he's basically the Most High saying, go over there. He's saying, go right. And then after he says go right, then you just like, you look at like, you're just dumbfounded, right? There has to be action in order to even know that there really was hearing. There has to be doing and hearing when we think about the word of Elohim. We know that there was actual hearing because there's doing. And so again, when we think about the mother and brothers of Yeshua, again, if they were in this state of not doing, maybe this, I guess later the John thing is later. The John chapter 7 thing that happens with the brothers is later. So they haven't at that time gotten. But they must have been, and it's even more so when you think about the mother, when you think about where, she being who she is, really should have been his closest and best disciple. Now, if we was Catholic, we would say that Mary was in fact the first disciple. That's what they say. Mary was the first disciple.
Mother Mary, you know what I'm saying?
She's not even.
She
was immaculately conceived, just like Yeshua was, according to that. But I think we do see where there's kind of an unevenness with the flow of Mary and the brothers, and when we hear and understand what it is that Yeshua is saying, it helps for us to be able to understand what we have to make sure that what we're doing as we live this life as believers in the Most High. Nobody should ever be able to look at us and wonder who it is that we serve. The things that we say out of our mouths should only be a manifestation of what has already happened in our hearts and it should be, congruent with the life that we're actually living. And so Yeshua is saying to his disciples, you guys, y'all followed me from way over there. I was over there, and then I came over here, and y'all came with me, and y'all listened to every word that I say. Therefore, you're the people that I'm concerned about. The people who got to look for me and can't find me, those aren't my followers, but you are.
We got a comment says, we are created in the image of Elohim. This is our true reflection. How many have forgotten what they are supposed to really look like?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the idea really of the fall of man, it really is what James is talking about over here. The idea of not knowing what it is that you are. Not knowing something that really is that simple as looking in the mirror. Not knowing something that you actually should know. Like we really should know who and what we are. But because of transgression, because of sin, we are separated from the Almighty, and we don't have any clue as to what we're supposed to be. And that's a perfect example when you think about the mother of Yeshua and her and his brothers, where they really should have known and been right there by his side the whole time. But the good thing about it is that we know the end of the story, and we see that they make it. They make it. They just had a little rough patch. Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or comments about any of those things there? Okay, so that being said, we will be done for now. We're looking at the words of the Master, y'all willing. We will be back on next Shabbat to continue with our look at the words of the Master. So for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.